Newark, New Jersey. 2:07 a.m. The first winter rain lashed down like whips, wind howling through every crack in the factory walls of Garson Foods. Fluorescent lights cast a cold glow over the cracked tile floors and old coffee stains. The harsh clatter of the packaging lines echoed like a heartbeat gone wrong pounding in Thomas Vega's ears as he worried about his daughter. Thomas stepped into the break room, his jacket still damp from last night's delivery run, his worn work boots squelched with each step. In his hand was a plastic cup of coffee from the cheapest powdered mix in the vending machine, the bitter black liquid people drank, not for taste, but to stay awake through 10 straight hours on their feet. He planned to sit for 10 minutes before heading back to the cold storage shift. But his steps halted as the door clicked shut behind him. Someone was in the room, not a coworker he recognized. In the corner tucked behind the broken vending machine, a woman huddled like a child. Her blonde hair was disheveled, high heels kicked askew under her feet, and an expensive wool coat draped loosely over her shoulders as if thrown on in haste. She didn't notice him. She was crying not soft tears, but deep, shuddering sobs that racked her body, the kind that came from a place so broken it stole your breath. Thomas considered turning away. Maybe she needed to be alone. But then he thought of Ellie, his daughter. He remembered the night her mother left, how Ellie had sat in the kitchen corner clutching her stuffed bear, crying as if her little soul was unraveling. He couldn't leave. Thomas cleared his throat softly. "Excuse me, are you okay?" The woman startled. She turned her deep blue eyes, red-rimmed mascara streaked down her cheeks. Even through the evident anguish, her refined beauty stood out like a luxury car in a rundown lot. But in those eyes was a profound sadness, the kind Thomas saw in his own mirror every morning facing himself after his wife's death. "I'm fine." Her voice was hoarse, clearly a lie. Thomas didn't believe her. He said nothing, just unscrewed his thermos, pouring coffee into a second paper cup. He slid it toward her. "Worst coffee in New Jersey," he said, attempting a small smile. "But at least it's hot." She stared at him surprised, as if kindness from a stranger was unfamiliar. After a moment, she took the cup, her hand still trembling. "Thank you. I'm Rachel." "Thomas. I work third shift in cold storage. You don't look like you're on the night crew. I think I'd recognize most folks here." She hesitated. "I'm not exactly working here, just needed a quiet place to think." He nodded. No more questions. And so they sat, two strangers, a single father and a well-dressed woman, hiding in the shadows, sharing a bitter cup of coffee, amid the distant hum of the production lines outside. The rain pounded harder against the windows, but in that dim room, the silence between them felt less empty. Thomas sipped his coffee, glancing at the clock. His break was almost up, but he lingered, sensing she wasn't ready to be alone again. Rachel clutched the cup like a lifeline, her sobs fading into shaky breaths. She wiped her eyes with the sleeve of her coat, smearing more mascara. "I'm sorry," she murmured. "I didn't mean to intrude." "You're not intruding," Thomas replied gently. "This room's for breaks. And sometimes breaks are for more than just coffee." She looked at him, then really looked. Her eyes searched his face as if weighing whether he was genuine. In the harsh light, Thomas's own weariness showed the lines around his eyes from sleepless nights, the calluses on his hands from endless shifts, the faint scar on his forehead from a warehouse accident years ago. "Why are you being nice?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Thomas shrugged. "Because I've been there, crying in a corner, feeling like the world's caving in. No one should go through that alone." Rachel's shoulders relaxed a fraction. She took a sip of the coffee, grimacing at the taste, but not complaining. "It's awful," she said with a weak laugh. "Told you," Thomas chuckled, "but it does the job." They fell into a companionable quiet. The factory noises filtered in the beep of forklifts, the whir of conveyor belts, but here it felt distant. Thomas checked his watch again. "I should get back," he said reluctantly. "Shift's not over till dawn." Rachel nodded, setting down the cup. "Thank you, Thomas. Really." He stood, grabbing his thermos. At the door he paused. "If you need another bad coffee sometime, I'll be here most nights. She managed a small smile. Maybe. Thomas stepped out into the cold corridor, the door swinging shut behind him. The rain still hammered outside, but inside him something had shifted. A simple act of kindness in the dead of night. Little did he know this was just the beginning. 3 nights later, she was back. Thomas had just finished unloading another pallet in the cold storage, his breath fogging in the chilled air. The factory's rhythm hadn't changed, the endless beep of scanners, the rumble of conveyor belts, but something in him had. He found himself glancing at the break-room door more often, wondering if the woman Rachel would return. He told himself it didn't matter. She was a stranger, after all. But that night, as he pushed open the door at 2:07 a.m., there she was in the same corner, her coat draped over her like a shield. This time her eyes weren't as red, but the exhaustion etched into her features was deeper. She looked up as he entered, a flicker of recognition softening her gaze. "Thomas," she said quietly. He nodded, holding up 2 paper cups. "Figured you might show. Made an extra." She accepted it without hesitation, her fingers brushing his briefly. The contact was fleeting, but it carried a warmth that cut through the room's chill. They sat in silence at first, the rain still pattering against the windows outside, a steady companion to their unspoken thoughts. Over the next few nights, the pattern solidified. Rachel appeared like clockwork, slipping into the break room as if it were her secret refuge. Thomas started preparing the coffee in advance, pouring from his thermos into the spare cup. No words were needed at first, just the shared ritual of sipping the bitter brew, listening to the factory's distant hum. Gradually, the silence gave way to words. It started small. "Your daughter," Rachel said one night, breaking the quiet. "You mentioned her last time. What's she like?" Thomas leaned back in his chair, a soft smile tugging at his lips despite the fatigue in his eyes. "Ellie, she's 8 in 3rd grade, smart as a whip. She can rattle off 17 superhero names in one breath: Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, you name it. Loves drawing, too. Last week, she sketched this whole comic about a girl who saves the world with kindness, says it's based on her teacher." Rachel's eyes lit up faintly, a ghost of a smile on her face. "Sounds wonderful. My son, Henry, he's 14, obsessed with astronomy. He can talk for hours about Jupiter's moons or black holes. We have this telescope in the backyard. He stays up late charting stars even when he's supposed to be sleeping." Thomas chuckled. "Kids and their passions. Ellie drags me to the library every weekend for more books on heroes. Costs nothing, thank God." The conversations deepened from there. Night after night, they peeled back layers, sharing fragments of their lives like pieces of a puzzle neither had asked to solve. One evening, as the rain turned to sleet tapping against the glass, Thomas opened up more. "Ellie's mom left after I lost my last job. Couldn't handle the struggle, the late bills, the empty fridge. Said she needed more for herself. I don't blame her, not really. But Ellie, she asks about her sometimes. I tell her stories, the good ones." Rachel stared into her cup, her voice soft. "I'm sorry. That must be hard." "It is," he admitted, "but I swore I'd never let her down. Work every shift, save every penny. After my wife died, well, that was the real kicker. Cancer. We couldn't afford the last round of treatment. Insurance didn't cover it all. I held her hand till the end, promising I'd make it right for Ellie." Rachel's hands tightened around her cup. Her eyes glistened. "I understand that pain. Henry, he has a congenital heart defect. We've been on the transplant list for months. Every checkup, the bills pile up and the odds get worse. I watch him struggle to breathe after playing too hard and it breaks me. But I can't let him see it. I cry in the shower, smile when I walk out." Thomas reached across the table, not touching her, but offering presence. "You're doing everything you can. That's what matters." They shared those vulnerabilities, the raw ache of single parenthood, the guilt of hiding tears from their children, the night spent staring at ceilings, wondering if they'd fail. Rachel spoke of Henry's dreams of becoming an astronomer, how he'd map constellations on his bedroom ceiling with glow-in-the-dark stars. Thomas described Ellie's artwork, how she'd draw families always with a dad and a kid, sometimes adding a mom in the clouds. He noticed the contradictions in Rachel, the expensive coat, the manicured nails that didn't belong in a factory break room. She seemed out of place, like someone from a different world, yet her pain felt so familiar. He didn't pry. Whatever brought her here, it was hers to share. Until that Friday night, the door swung open at exactly 2:07. Rachel entered, but she was different. No tears, no trembling. Her hair was pulled back neatly, her posture, straight eyes sharp. She didn't touch the coffee Thomas had prepared. "Thomas," she said, sitting across from him, "I need to tell you something." He nodded, sensing the weight in her voice. She met his gaze steadily for the first time without looking away. "I'm not just some stranger. I'm not even supposed to be here like this. My name is Rachel Anderson. My grandfather founded Garson Foods. My father ran it, and now I do. I'm the CEO." The words hung in the air, heavy and unreal. The factory noises seemed to fade into a distant buzz. Thomas blinked, processing. "You're the boss." She nodded, her expression a mix of relief and fear. "I come here because it's the one place I can be weak without judgment. No board members, no investors, no expectations, just quiet. And you, Thomas, you're the first person in 10 years who's given me a cup of coffee without asking for anything in return." He sat back stunned. The pieces clicked, the fine closed the poise beneath the pain, but it didn't change the woman he'd seen crying in the corner. "So, why tell me now?" he asked gently. "Because you've seen me, not the title, not the money, but as a mother who's hurting. And I couldn't keep pretending." Thomas looked at her, his voice steady. "Whoever you are, Rachel, I still see that. A mother in pain. The coffee's the same either way." For the first time, Rachel truly smiled, a real, unburdened one mixed with exhaustion and gratitude. The tension in the room eased, replaced by a deeper connection. That night, the coffee grew cold on the table. But the friendship forming between them burned warmer than ever. A week passed without her. Thomas continued his routine, trudging through the cold storage shifts, the factory's relentless noise a constant backdrop to his thoughts. Each night, at 2:07 a.m., he entered the break room with 2 cups of coffee from his thermos. He placed the second one on the table across from his seat, watching it steam and then cool untouched. The silence felt heavier now, laced with unspoken worry. Was she okay? Had his words crossed a line? He didn't dare ask around the factory. Rachel's secret was hers to keep. Instead, he sipped his own coffee alone, staring at the rain-streaked window, memories of their conversations replaying like echoes. By the 7th night, doubt crept in. Maybe it had all been a fleeting connection, a brief respite for both of them in their separate worlds. He told himself it was fine. Life went on shifts to work, Ellie to feed, bills to pay. But the empty chair across from him felt like a void. On the 8th night, the door swung open precisely at 2:07. Thomas looked up, his heart skipping a beat. There she was, Rachel but transformed. No disheveled hair or tear-streaked face. Her blonde locks were pulled into a neat bun, her posture commanding, eyes sharp and focused. She wore a tailored blazer over a silk blouse, the kind of outfit that screamed boardroom authority. In her hand was a manila envelope. "Thomas," she said, her voice steady, professional. She sat across from him without touching the waiting coffee. "We need to talk." He straightened, setting his cup down. "Rachel, I wasn't sure you'd come back." She offered a small, knowing smile. "I needed time to think, after what I told you." He nodded, waiting. The factory hum seemed distant now, the room charged with anticipation. Rachel placed the envelope on the table, sliding it toward him. "I've reviewed your personnel file. After our last conversation, I had HR pull reports on the entire night shift team." Thomas's brow furrowed. "Did I do something wrong?" "The opposite," she replied, her tone matter-of-fact but warm. "You're one of the top performers, highest efficiency ratings, no absences in 11 months, no disciplinary issues. Your coworkers describe you as reliable, patient, dedicated. You've been pulling extra hours without complaint, even volunteering for the toughest loads." He stared at her, confusion mixing with a spark of hope. "I just do my job. Keep my head down." Rachel leaned forward slightly. "Open it." Thomas hesitated, then lifted the flap. Inside was a formal document, crisp letterhead with the Garson Foods logo. He scanned the lines. Proposal for promotion, supervisor of cold storage operations, day shift assignment, salary increase, double current rate, full benefits package, including expanded health insurance, flexible hours for family obligations. His hands trembled as he read. The numbers blurred. The raise alone would cover Ellie's school supplies, maybe even a better apartment. Day shifts meant picking her up from school dinners together, weekends free. Health insurance. After what happened to his wife, that word alone felt like a lifeline. But why me? He finally asked, his voice thick. I'm just the guy who gave you coffee on a bad night. Rachel's eyes softened, the CEO facade cracking just enough to reveal the woman he'd met in tears. Because you didn't know who I was, and you were kind anyway. In 10 years of running this company, I've sat in meetings with executives who smiled to my face and schemed behind my back. But you saw a person hurting and offered what you had: a terrible cup of coffee and a listening ear. She paused, glancing at the untouched cup between them. It reminded me why my grandfather started this place. Not for profits, but for people. People like you, Thomas, who keep it running through the nights no one sees. And people like me who sometimes forget that. Thomas set the paper down, his mind reeling. I don't know what to say. This changes everything. Then say yes, Rachel urged gently. For Ellie. She deserves a father who isn't exhausted every day. And for you, you've earned it. He looked at the document again, the words swimming through unshed tears. For years, he'd fought alone the grief of losing his wife, the sting of his ex leaving the grind of survival. This wasn't just a job. It was a chance at life. Yes, he whispered then louder. Yes, thank you, Rachel. I can't believe this. She smiled fully now, relief evident in her posture. HR will handle the transition. Start next month. And Thomas, this isn't charity, it's recognition. They sat for a few more minutes, the envelope between them like a bridge. The coffee grew cold, but neither minded. For the first time in years, Thomas felt a weight lift from his shoulders. As his break ended, he stood gripping the envelope tightly. I don't know how to repay you. You already have, she said softly, by reminding me what matters. Thomas stepped out into the corridor, the factory lights harsh but somehow brighter. The rain still fell outside, but inside him a warmth spread. He glanced up at the ceiling as if thanking the stars or whatever force had brought Rachel into that break room. For the first time in a long while, the future didn't feel like an endless night. Thomas started his new role a month later. The transition was smoother than he expected. No more graveyard shifts in the freezing cold storage, no more dragging himself home at dawn, collapsing into bed just as Ellie stirred for school. Now he worked days overseeing the cold storage team, coordinating loads, training new hires. The paychecks arrived like clockwork, double what he'd earned before, with benefits that included full health coverage. For the first time since his wife's diagnosis, Thomas didn't flinch at medical bills or worry about a simple doctor's visit for Ellie. He picked her up from school every afternoon, her small hand slipping into his as they walked home. Daddy, guess what I learned today? She'd chatter, her backpack bouncing. We read about stars like the ones Henry likes. Thomas had told her about Rachel and Henry in bits and pieces, not the CEO part, not yet, but enough for Ellie to know there was a boy out there fighting and a mom who worried just like he did. It made her drawings brighter, her stories fuller of hope. They moved to a small apartment in Westfield, a quieter neighborhood, with tree-lined streets and a park nearby. The rent was higher but affordable now. Ellie had her own room painted soft blue like the sky she loved to draw. She started smiling more at school, her teacher noted, sharing toys, joining games. She's opening up, the note said. Thomas framed it on the fridge, a quiet victory. But amid the changes, Thomas couldn't shake his concern for Rachel. She hadn't returned to the break room since that pivotal night. Their meeting shifted to her executive office on the top floor, a world away from the dim vending machine corner. Polished wood desks, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Newark's skyline, and a high-end coffee machine that brewed blends he'd never tasted. Yet Rachel insisted on using his thermos for their talks, pouring the cheap factory mix into fine china mugs. "For old time's sake," she'd say with a wry smile. One afternoon, as he sat across from her desk, the city sprawl visible through the glass, Thomas asked the question that had lingered. "How's Henry doing?" Rachel set down her mug, her composed facade cracking. She looked out the window, her voice steady but strained. "The transplant list. We're close. A donor match came through. Surgery's next week." Thomas leaned forward. "That's good news, right?" She nodded, but her eyes betrayed the fear. "If it works. If not, I could lose him." Her hands clenched and her lap knuckles white. In that moment, she wasn't the CEO commanding boardrooms. She was the mother he'd first seen sobbing in the shadows. He reached across the desk, not presuming to touch her, but offering solidarity. "Then let me wait with you. Through the updates, the waiting rooms, whatever you need." Rachel looked at him, surprised. "You do that?" "Of course. You've given me more than a job. You've given me hope." From that day, their bond deepened beyond coffee chats. Thomas sent daily texts, simple messages of encouragement. "Thinking of Henry today. He's strong like his mom." Or "Ellie drew a star for him. Says it'll guide him through." Rachel replied with updates, Henry's latest scan results, his excitement over a new astronomy book, her own sleepless nights. The surgery day arrived, a crisp Tuesday in early spring. Thomas took the morning off, pacing his apartment while Ellie colored at the table. He checked his phone obsessively, heart pounding with each notification. Finally, at 6:02 p.m., the message came. "Surgery successful, his heart's beating strong, doctors are optimistic. Thank you, Thomas, for everything." Relief flooded him like a wave. He hugged Ellie tight, tears pricking his eyes. "Henry's okay, kiddo." As weeks passed, Rachel transformed subtly. Inspired by Thomas's grounded perspective, she began wandering the factory floors more often, talking to workers, asking about their families, implementing small changes like better break room amenities and flexible shifts for parents. "You reminded me," she told him once, "that this company is people, not just profits." Thomas saw the ripple effects. Morale improved, productivity rose, but more personally, he felt a pull toward her, a quiet admiration growing into something deeper, though he pushed it aside. She was his boss, after all. One sunny afternoon, Thomas suggested bringing Ellie to visit. Rachel agreed eagerly. They met at the hospital where Henry was recovering, still weak, but alert, his room filled with star charts and books. Ellie bounded in, clutching a drawing, a boy under a night sky surrounded by glowing stars. "For you, Henry," she said shyly. "So you can see the stars, even inside." Henry's face lit up, his voice soft from fatigue. "Thanks. Want to draw constellations with me?" The kids sat together, markers flying across paper. Thomas and Rachel watched from the doorway, sharing a glance that lingered a beat too long. "He's getting stronger every day," Rachel whispered, "because of people like you believing in us." Thomas smiled. "We're all just holding on. But together, it's easier." As the sun set outside the window, casting golden light over the room, Thomas felt the pieces of his life aligning. The promotion had changed his circumstances, but this connection, this unexpected friendship, had mended something deeper. 3 months later, Henry's recovery was nothing short of miraculous. The new heart beat steadily in his chest, pumping life back into his pale cheeks and curious eyes. He started physical therapy, relearning to walk without gasping for air, his steps tentative, but growing stronger each day. Rachel spent every spare moment at his side, reading astronomy books aloud, helping him chart constellations from his hospital window, watching as his passion for the stars reignited like a supernova. Thomas followed the progress through texts and visits, his own life settling into a rhythm of stability. The promotion had opened doors weekends with Ellie at the park, her laughter echoing as she chased pigeons or sketched clouds. She talked more about school, her grades climbing, her once shy demeanor blooming into confidence. "Daddy, can we visit Henry again?" she'd ask, clutching her crayons. Thomas always said yes. Their friendship with Rachel and Henry deepened, evolving into something familial. Casual coffees turned into shared dinners at Rachel's home, a modest townhouse in the upscale part of Newark far from the factory's grit. Thomas felt out of place at first, his work boots scuffing the polished floors, but Rachel waved off his apologies. "This house needs more life," she'd say, smiling as Ellie and Henry bonded over drawings and stories. One crisp afternoon, Thomas brought Ellie for a visit. Henry was home now, propped on the couch with a blanket, his telescope set up by the window. Ellie burst in her backpack, slung over one shoulder, holding out a rolled-up paper. "I made this for you, Henry." He unrolled it carefully, a vibrant drawing of a boy gazing at a night sky filled with swirling galaxies and shooting stars. In the corner, two adults, a man and a woman, sat at a table sipping from steaming cups. "That's you under the stars," Ellie explained proudly. "And that's my daddy and your mommy having coffee because they're friends." Henry's eyes widened. "It's awesome. Want to add more stars with me?" The kids huddled together, markers scattering across the coffee table, their laughter filling the room. Thomas and Rachel stepped into the kitchen, watching from afar. Rachel poured coffee, still a cheap mix for tradition's sake, her hands steady now, free from the tremble of those early nights. "Look at them," Thomas said softly, "like they've known each other forever." Rachel nodded, her gaze lingering on the scene. Tears welled in her eyes, unbidden. "Thomas, if you hadn't asked if I was okay that night, I might have broken completely." He turned to her, his voice gentle. "And if you hadn't said you were the CEO, I might still think you were some angel wandering into a factory. But we both know better now." She laughed through the tears, wiping her cheek. "We're just ordinary people, aren't we? You grinding through shifts to keep a roof over Ellie's head. Me hiding in shadows because the weight of decisions crushed me. But when we see each other with our hearts, miracles happen." Thomas met her eyes, a quiet understanding passing between them. "Kindness starts it all. A cup of coffee, a listening ear. It saved us both." Later, as they said goodbye, Ellie hugged Rachel tightly. "You're like a bonus mom," she whispered, innocent and true. Rachel's breath caught her arms, wrapping around the girl. Henry waved from the couch, his drawing now framed with extra stars courtesy of his new friend. From that day, their lives intertwined more fully. Thomas and Rachel supported each other like pillars, her guiding him through the corporate world, him reminding her of the human side of business. Ellie and Henry became like siblings, their playdates filled with art and stargazing. In Rachel's office at Garson Foods, a new addition appeared on the wall, Ellie's drawing professionally framed. Below it, etched on a small plaque, "Kindness is the beginning of every miracle." Employees noticed the change in their CEO, more approachable, more invested in their stories. Thomas's team thrived under his supervision, the factory humming with renewed energy. But beyond the walls, two families had become one, bound not by blood or titles, but by a shared cup of coffee in the dark. As Thomas tucked Ellie into bed that night, she yawned and asked, "Daddy, is Rachel our family now?" He kissed her forehead. "Yeah, kiddo, I think she is." Outside, the Newark sky cleared, stars twinkling faintly above the city lights, a reminder that even in the coldest nights, warmth could find its way.